Well, today is the 7th day of Chodesh Kislev, and I'm sitting upstairs in the Renana Community Kollel. Baruch Hashem, beautiful matzv of learning going on downstairs. So came upstairs for a quieter spot to be able to learn with everybody. And Be'ez Hashem Yisbarach, we are holding at the bottom of the Samech Vav Amud Aleph. Today's Amud is Samech Vav Amud Beis, and the Gemara is continuing with analysis of the story of when Hillel became the Nasi on that year Erev Pesach that was Chalias B'Shabbos, where Hillel had forgotten the halacha. Everybody had forgotten the halacha, what to do in terms of Shechman Korban Pesach on Shabbos itself, and then Hillel had forgotten the halacha, what to do with the knife. And he said, leave it to the Jewish people. If they're not Nevi'im, they're B'nai Nevi'im. And the next day, everybody came, and they anybody that had a sheep, they put the knife in the wool, and anybody that had a goat, they put the knife between the horns, and that's how they carried the knife up to Har HaBayis, up to the Beis HaMikdash, in order to be able to shech the Korban Pesach. It says the Gemara, the bottom of Samach Vav Amud Aleph Amamar. It said in the story, anybody that has Pesach as a tles, a sheep, you put it in the wool, put the knife in the wool. Gedi, and if it was a goat, you put it between the horns. Says the Gemara on Samach Vav and Beis, Shaila. This is a problem. The Haka Avid Avodah B'Kachim. This is an Isser. How could you use your korban to do avodah? That would be totally inappropriate. Rashi points out, there's an issue about using a korban for something else, using kachim, that for any other purpose. That's how Rashi learns. The Tosfos here quotes from the Yerushalmi that another mahalach in the answer to this. But the question of the Gemara, you're doing avodah with kachim. That's an issue deraisa. Says the Gemara ki Hillel. No, they pass it like Hillel. How did Hillel pass it? Hillel says, "Amru alav al Hillel." They said about Hillel, "Miyamav lo mal adam ba'olasai." For the entirety of a person of Hillel's life, no person ever did me'ilah, ever used their korban inappropriately. There was never any me'ilah that ever happened. How? Why? How did they manage to pull that off? Ela mevia chulin azar. They brought it to the azar chulin, meaning nobody was makdish their korban until they got to the Beis HaMikdash. Makdisha, and then they would be makdish it. And then he would do smicha. He would put his hands on top of it, and he would shecht it. That's how the Bavli explains it. The Yerushalmi explains, says Tosfos, a different answer. V'haka avid avodah b'kachim. So Tosfos there says the chol avodah shel tzorech hakorban ein by me'ilah. The Yerushalmi holds that any avodah that is necessary for the korban, there is no me'ilah in that. There's no me'ilah if it is necessary for the korban. Nevertheless, the Bavli holds that they would not be makdish the animal until they got to the Beis HaMikdash itself. Says the Gemara. Okay, fine. Pesach b'Shabbos heichi matzah makdishle. But if you have a Pesach that falls out on Shabbos, meaning an Erev Pesach that falls out on Shabbos, and you want to be makdish your korban Pesach, that's the Lashon Pesach here. Pesach b'Shabbos heichi matzah makdishle. How can you be makdish an animal to be used as a korban Pesach on Shabbos itself? When you get to the Azara, you get to the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash. Vatnan, didn't we learn in a Mishnah? Ein makdishim ve'ein ma'richin ve'ein machrim ve'ein makbim truma u'maisros. You are not allowed to on Shabbos. You're not allowed to be makdish an animal. You're not allowed to calculate erchim, meaning you're not allowed to make a vow to say I'm going to give this value to the Beis HaMikdash. That's the parasha of erchim at the end of Sefer Vayikra. Ve'in machrimim, and we don't make a cherim. We don't. That means creating an isur that the kohanim. The only people that are allowed to use this. Ve'in magbim truma ma'aishos, and we do not separate trumas and ma'aishos. Meaning none of these things are allowed on Shabbos. Kol elu b'yom tov amra, and all of this is said with regards to Yom Tov. Kal v'chem b'Shabbos. How much more on Shabbos? Meaning you're not allowed to do any of these things. This would all be what's the Isser? So this is the Mishnah Maseches Beitza says Rashi b'Shabbos. So the Isser would be metaking something. You're changing this thing to make it usable for a different purpose. So says the or making a kinyan alternatively. So Hani Mili says the Gemara these words This is all true with regards to a chayva, an obligation that you have to pay up and fulfill. She'ein kavod lahem zman, that doesn't have a specific time that the Torah tells you that you need to do this at this point in time. But if you have an obligation that you have a specific time that you need to do, that's kavod lahem zman, the time is fixed. Magdishim, then you are allowed to be makdish it. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, it says makdish adam is Pesach b'Shabbos v'chagiga. So B'Yom Tov says Rabbi Yochanan, you can be makdish your Korban Pesach on Shabbos, and you can be makdish your chagiga on Yom Tov. Both of those things you are obligated to do in that time period. Pesach, there is only 6 hours that you have to bring it, and you have to do it then. And your chagiga, well, it's true, you have you can be mashim the chagiga if you didn't do it on the first day of Yom Tov. You can do it in Chol Hamoed, but you have on Yom Tov is the correct time to do it. It is important to point out that while it is true that your chagiga can be makdish on Yom Tov, you cannot be makdish on Shabbos, because the chagiga is an obligation on Yom Tov. It overrides Yom Tov, but it doesn't override Shabbos, because its obligation is not on Shabbos. Nevertheless, says the Gemara, "Haloi mechamer," but are you not? Okay, good. So we've explained how they can be makdish it. But now we're going to challenge Hillel from another direction. Hillel said that they stuck it inside the wool or inside of the horns, and the animal would carry it up to the Beis Hamikdash. But that's another Isser on Shabbos. V'haloi mechamer. But you are now violating the Isser of being mechamer, which means mechamer achar behemta is you are causing your animal to work for you. It's now working for you. You're pushing it along to do a malacha for you that you cannot do. Says the Gemara, v'aloi mechamer, you are being mechamer achar behemta. Says the Gemara, mechamer kala achar yad. No, this is not regular mechamer. Regular mechamer is that you would get a cow to carry a load. Nobody uses sheep or goats to schlep anything for them. This is an unusual, irregular way of having something schlep something for you. Therefore, it is mechamer kila achar yad. It is not a normative way of doing this isser, and therefore it would only be an isser d'Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, mechamer kila achar yad nami no isser mechamer kila achar yad nami. So even doing so in a non-normal way, so it's not the Isur Deraisa, like, okay, fine. So you've gotten rid of the Isur Deraisa, Isur Midrabanan, there's still an Isur Midrabanan. How could you have an Isur Derabanan that everybody, the whole Klal Yisrael is violating this Isur Derabanan in order to get it to the Beis Hamikdash? Says the Gemara, Haina Deka Boy Minei. This is exactly what the Bnei B'Seir were asking him. Davashi Yesh Lehetem Min HaTorah, something which is Meikar Adin, it's permissible Min HaTorah. The Torah says you're allowed to be mechamer kol achar yad, because everything kol achar yad on Shabbos is mutter. And you have an Isser d'Rabbanan that is standing in front of you to uproot the Isser d'Oraisa. Kol achar yad, even in the case of kol achar yad, b'makom mitzvah, in this case of doing a mitzvah, you have a shvus b'makom mitzvah. What is the din of a shvus b'makom mitzvah, an Isser d'Rabbanan, in the place of doing a mitzvah d'Oraisa? What is the din? Amar lehem, he said, halacha zu shamati v'shechachti. This was the halacha that I had heard and I'd forgotten. El hinich lehem leYisrael. But leave it to the Jewish people. They're not Nevi'im, they are the sons of Nevi'im. And that was the question that they were asking him. They were asking him about mechamer achar behemta. What exactly is the din if it would be kala achar yad and only violating a din d'Rabbanan for somebody that didn't have a knife available for them to use in the Beis Hamikdash? What would you be? What would they do? And said Hillel, take a look. You'll see what the Jewish people do. Says the Gemara as follows: Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. We'll get to a little bit of Agarata now, reflecting on the halachos and the story that we just told. Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav says, Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, kol hamisyahid, anybody that is arrogant, is over on gaiva. Im chachamhu, if he is a wise person, chachmasa mistalekes mimenu, that his wisdom is going to flee from him. Im navihu, if he is a prophet, nivuasa mistalekes mimenu, his nivuah is going to disappear from him. So this is a heavy thing. Don't get arrogant, says the Gemara. Im chachamhu, chachmasa mistalekes mimenu, if he is a chacham, his chachma is going to disappear from him. You know this, from Hillel, from the story that we just told, the Amar Mar, because we just said in this Brisa, he began to make fun of them. He was saying to them, how come you guys don't know the halacha? You didn't learn from Shammai v'Avdalion. That's why. He was giving the Musa, but he was giving the Musa in a way that made him prop himself up. And he said to them, Halacha zu shamati v'shachachti. This halacha I heard and I forgot. So you see, he was the Gadol Hadar. He was the only one that knew the halacha. And nevertheless, even though he was such a Talmid Chacham, because he was arrogant, he forgot the halacha. Now, this was temporary arrogance, and you see that he was metaken that instantaneously thereafter, because they said to him, "What about the halacha in this case?" And he says, "I heard it v'shachachti, I forgot." He wasn't ashamed to say so. He was metaken. Lichara, and that's what happens if a person wants to prop himself up. The Torah says no. Which Baruch Hu says no. You can't do that. So give you an opportunity to knock you down a peg. If he's a prophet, his nevuah is going to disappear from him. Who do you know this from? Midvara, from the Devara Neviah. The pasuk says in Shiras Devara, Chadlu prazan bi Yisrael, chadlu ad shekamti Devara, shekamti aim be Yisrael. So the prazan means the scattered out cities. That chadlu prazan bi Yisrael, that until, and it says until I came along, nobody was safe. Nobody was able to live in scattered out cities. Chalu prazon bi Yisrael. Chalu ad shekamti devara, until I showed up. Shekamti ein bi Yisrael. I got up. My mother and the Jewish people, the pasuk in Shoftim. And what's the problem here is that she was being denigrating to the people that came before her. Nobody else could have gotten the job. Nobody could have done it except for me. And then the pasuk says, Uri devara, Uri divrei shir. Rise, awaken, devara, awaken, and sing nevuah. It seems says the Gemara that after her saying nobody could have done this except for me, so the nevuah disappeared from her, and then she had to reawaken the nevuah, and the nevuah left her. Rish Lakish says, "Kol adam shekayis," not just a person that is arrogant, but a person that gets angry. Kol adam shekayis im chacham hu, if he's a wise person, chachmasam istalekes menu, his wisdom is going to disappear from him. B'mnavihu nevuasayim istalekes menu. The same problem that exists by gaiva exists by kas. Im chacham hu chachmasam istalekes menu. If he's a chacham, his chachma is going to disappear. Who do you know this from? Mi Moshe, from Moshe Rabbeinu. The pasuk says at the end of the war against Midian, that Moshe Rabbeinu got upset with the Pikudei HaChayil, with the people that the officers of the army. And the pasuk says, and Lazar HaKohen then has to teach them. This is the halachas of Geulah Midian, how to kasha the kelim. He says, this is the rule of the Torah that Hashem taught Moshe. Michlal the Moshe, it comes out from this that Moshe Rabbeinu himself forgot the halacha. He didn't have the halacha clear. So Allah HaKohen, who had learnt it from Moshe Rabbeinu, has to come and teach it to everybody. Im Navi, if he is a Navi, his nevuah is going to disappear from him. Who do you know this from? Me Elisha. You learn this from Elisha. Navi Dirshu. Pasuk says, if not to the fact that I propped up Yehoshaphat, the king of Yehuda, I wouldn't look at you, I wouldn't see you. Meaning you got angry. He says, if not for that, if not for the fact that I'm necessary, I wouldn't want to look at you. Because the pasuk says after that, now go and get me a menagen, a musician. And once the menagen comes, the person that comes to play music, then nevuah rests upon Elisha again. But from this you see that he got angry and the nevuah disappeared from him. Amar of Mani Bar Pati says, Mani Bar Pati is the interesting name, the son of the Hema. Rabbani, the son of the Patis, the Hema. Anybody that gets angry, even if Min HaShamayim they decreed that he should be gadol, that he has greatness coming to him, Maridin Osai, they lower him. They bring you down. Minalan, how do you know this? Me Eliyav, you know this from Eliyav? As the pasuk says, Shenemar Vayichar Af Eliyav b'David. Eliyav got angry with David. Vayomer, and he said, Lama Zayirata, why did you come down? Al min natashta me'at hatzayin ha'heinem b'midbar. And who did you leave the sheep with in the desert? Ani adati es zdaincha. I know your misguided attempts, your misguided intentions. But the evil that's in your heart, because you came down to see the battle. You wanted to see what's going on. And when Shmuel went to anoint him as king, in all of the brothers of David, it says in the pasuk, this one Kodesh Baruch Hu hasn't chosen. With Eliyav Ksiv, and when it came to Eliyav, who had yelled at his younger brother David, Vayomer Hashem el Shmuel, Hashem says to Shmuel, Al tabit el mer'ehu, v'al gvav k'maseh, don't look at his appearance and on his height and stature. Ki ma'astir, because I'm disgusted by him. Michlal da'hav rachim le ad ha'idna. It implies that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loved him until that point in time. But once he yelled at David for leaving the sheep, angry with him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu took him down. Means that it doesn't mean that he was going to be the Melech. It means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu loved him at some point in time, and then HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not love him afterwards. And that's what Ramani Maparach is saying. Even if there was Gedula that was coming to him in Shemaim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be married him. Says the Gemara, first very, very wide line at the bottom of the page, 5 lines up from the bottom. We found that both Korban Pesach and the Ola of Shabbos override Shabbos. The Dachal Tumah Minalo. How do we know that they overruled Tumah? So this is an important sugya that we've referenced before with regards to Tumah being overridden if all of Klal Yisrael is Tameh. So we know that they're Dachal Shabbos. How do we know that they're Dachal Tumah? They said, "Ki hechad yalif Pesach mitamid le'inyan Shabbos, hachanami yalif tamid Pesach le'inyan Tumah." The same way that Pesach learns from Shabbos with regards to, the same way that Pesach learns from Tamid to overrule Shabbos. Hachanami yalif tamid Pesach, the Korban Tamid should learn from Korban Pesach le'inyan Tumah. You should learn from Korban Pesach that it overrides Tumah. Says the Gemara, Pesach Gufi Minalan. How do you know that Korban Pesach overrides Tumah? Rabbi Yochanan teaches us. The pasuk says, "Ish ki tamid lenefesh." Each person, if they would be impure, Ish ninchel Pesach Sheni, ve'in tzibur ninchel Pesach Sheni. An individual is pushed off to Pesach Sheni, and a tzibur is not pushed off to Pesach Sheni. This is the beginning of the 9th parak of Bamidbar, where the people came to Moshe Rabbeinu and they said to him, "Lama nigra, why should we lose out on offering Korban Pesach?" And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says that there's this institution called Pesach Sheni, and the pasuk says ish. That a person is pushed off to Pesach Sheni, but a tzibur is not pushed off to Pesach Sheni. Ela avdi betumah, but you are allowed to bring the Korban Pesach if everybody is tamid. The whole tzibur is tamid. Marle Rabbi Shimon Lakish says Rabbi Shimon Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Ema the pasuk says Ish nechel lePesach Sheni. A person is pushed off to Pesach Sheni. Tzibur leis lehu takanta. Maybe you should say the opposite. That if the whole tzibur is tamei leis lehu takanta, that there's no option of Pesach Sheni at all. Meaning maybe the whole institution of Pesach is batal and ganzen. So says the Gemara, Loi, but Pesach Rishon v'Loi Pesach Sheni. It should be no Korban Pesach, not Pesach Rishon, not Pesach Sheni. Meaning from ish you can't derive this. All that you learn is that there's no Pesach Sheni for the tzibur. Maybe that means that there's no Pesach Sheni for anybody. Maybe it means that there's no Pesach at all for anybody. Rabbi Shimon Lakish says, Rabbi Shimon Lakish mehacha. You learn from here. You have to send away from the camp anybody that has tzaras. Tzaras is sent out of all 3 camps. Zav is anybody that has a tumah yosel of migufa. Right? Zav, Anida, Yaleres, Balkari. They have to be sent out of the Machane Levia, which in the days of the Mishkan was Machane Levia. In the days of the Beis Hamikdash, that is Har Habayis. And anybody that is tameh gets sent out of the Machane Shechina. And in the days of the Beis Hamikdash, that would be the Azar of the Beis Hamikdash. Says the Gemara, Yomer Tamei Mesim. So let the Torah say that those are the people that are Tamei Meis. Nefesh. So why does the pasuk say Tamei? What does the pasuk say? Tamei Nefesh should have said Tamei Mesim. V'al Yomar. Meaning, V'al Yomar, and then you don't have to teach me Zavan Mitzrayim. You don't have to teach Zavan Mitzrayim. But I would have learned Im Tamei Mesim Mishtachim Zavan Mitzrayim Lakolshken. If Tamei Meis is sent out from the Machane, from the Mishkan, or the Machane Shechina, Zavan Mitzrayim Lakolshken. Should I not learn a Kavachim that Zavan Mitzrayim all the more so? Says the Gemara, going on to Samach Zayin, Amud Aleph at the top of the page, Ella, Yesh Lecha Shash Zavan Mitzrayim Nishtachim Ve'in Tmei Meis Nishtachim. There is a time that Zavan and Mitzrayim are sent out, but a Tamei Meis is not sent out. That a Tamei Meis is allowed to stay in. Ve'ezeh, and what is this? Pesach haba b'tumah. This is the din of a Pesach that comes in a state of tumah, and this is the raya that Rish Lakish has. That from the Machane said. Now, obviously, pshat is that there are three different camps. Rashi points this out that the chamurim mitzvim esim shayu tumi yotze alav migufan ela al karchach ki itzich zav mitzar lehecha de'ein tamim esim mishtarech itzich. Meaning they're sent out further. But why do you have to say that they are sent out in the same category? So the drasha that Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish is teaching us here is that there is a time that you send out Zavin and Mitzarim, you don't send out Tamei Mesim, and Abai is going to challenge this Be'ezrim Yisbarach, which we will see on tomorrow's Amud. Wishing everybody a beautiful day, and the Be'ezrim Yisbarach, we should be zacher that we should find some time to all be learning in Eretz Yisrael.